Hi everyone and welcome to another Reuters Events webinar. Today, our topic is Voice of the Customer and how you can utilize VOC to create a seamless personalized experience that drives revenue and boosts loyalty. I'd like to extend a warm welcome and a big thank you to the over 1,400 of you who are joining us today. We're really excited to have you all tuning in. While we wait for those of you who are still joining the webinar, I'll just run through a quick introduction to our fantastic panel that we have joining us today and go over a few bits of housekeeping. Myself, I'm Scott Cormack, Global Event Director here at Reuters Events, and I'm really excited for this session. Joining us today, we have a great panel of experts from marketing and also customer care who are eager to dive into our discussion. I'll waste no time to introduce them because we've got a lot of them on panel today. First up, we have Jasmine Kim, former Chief Marketing Officer over at Sutter Health. Jasmine has a strong resume that boasts experience in companies such as Yahoo, Walmart, and Ken. And she's also featuring on the lineup of our Strategic Marketing USA event next week. So we're really excited to have your expertise join us on this webinar today. Next up, I'd like to welcome a good friend of Reuters Events to our panel, Carol Tran. Carol is a three-time entrepreneur, growth consultant, and most recently was the former head of growth over at Dolby. I really appreciate you taking the time to join the panel today and share your expertise in this area with our community. And then the penultimate seat at the table, we have Anna Guzman, Director of Customer Engagement and Loyalty over at TGI Fridays. This is Anna's debut involvement with us here at Reuters Events, so I'd like you all to give her a warm welcome. And this is sort of a warm-up for her as she looks to take the virtual stage at our Customer Service and Experience USA event on November 17th and 18th. I'm confident that your insights will be great for the discussion today, Anna, so welcome. And then finally, I'd like to welcome Martijn Attel, CEO and founder of today's webinar sponsor, VoteBash. VoteBash are a customer survey platform, that allow you to research, gather, and analyze customer feedback. And I'm excited to find out more. And then finally, rounding out today's busy panel, we have our great friend Nicholas Eisler. I know it's only been a week since I last had to introduce you, but it's always great to have you returning for more. Nick is the principal of Eisler Consulting and a former director of CX over at HP. And we're excited to continue to have his expertise feature throughout our webinars. Before we kick things off, I'd just like to highlight some quick pieces of housekeeping, as I mentioned. We've now on the Zoom platform, and I know everyone's developed a Zoom expertise over this year, so I'll keep it brief. But as I mentioned, over 1,400 of you joining us today from a host of different countries and exciting brands, such as Amazon, Starbucks, Sprint, Expedia, and Marriott, to name but a few of you. We're really grateful to have you all here joining us today. But please do let us know in the chat function that you should see on the bottom of your screens if you have any questions that you'd like to pose to our panel today. And we're always looking to incorporate the feedback and interaction into this webinar. And then finally, from me, the webinar will be recorded. So if you'd like to revisit some of the discussion from today, please do keep an eye out for that in your inbox over the next couple of days. But yeah, like I say, enough from me. Handing over to you, Nick. Why don't you kick us off?
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it. And thanks to the panel. Looking forward to this discussion. Thanks for everybody who's tuning in. As Scott had mentioned, all around the world, I see some folks who are already mentioning in the chat, welcoming and saying hello. Hello in Indonesia, where it's 11 p.m. Welcome aboard. It's 10 a.m. here in Denver. Those of you using that, good. Continue. Place your questions in there. As Scott had mentioned, there's also an opportunity in the Q&A box to put your questions in there as well. Panel, welcome. Let's jump in right away here and start with Anna. Welcome to the craziness. We've lost the background, but we still know that you're from TGI Fridays, and there you recently led an effort to start up a platform to get a 360-degree view of your customers to aid in segmentation. Can you share with us a little bit about that project and how you went about it and what sort of benefits it's reaping these days?
Well, it started with the fact that when I came to this role, we didn't have really the tools to do any segmentation or any orchestration of campaigns and through different channels. So that's one of the things I did. We needed that platform. We need to set up that foundation that will allow us to do all these. It took us a while. We incorporated all the different sources, our transactions, our users, our loyalty, our guest relations complaints, and anything else that we could incorporate And we build, I would like to say it's a 360-degree view of the customer, but I think we have some still way to go. So maybe it's a 200 and something degree view of the customer right now. But I'm very happy with the results because we are able to know now what are the people affinities aside from purchases, what are they opening when they are interested. We are able to do so much A/B testing. We're able to segment and engage and not engage audiences, and we're able to orchestrate these in different channels. So I am super excited to from the place that we started to the place that we are in right now. And I can't wait to incorporate more channels, more campaigns, more testing, and more personalization capabilities.
Yeah, you bet, Anna. And what I liked hearing there is the dynamic nature with which you're going about it. You're collecting data, you're collecting information and insights about your customers from all different directions, not just simply taking, say, one way of trying to understand and decipher what your customers are all about and what they're looking for. It's more of an integrated type of an effort. And I hear you saying that a couple times in your response there. Let's go around and see what other folks think about that and getting that view of the customers and so forth. Jasmine, let's what are your thoughts on that? Coming from the healthcare industry, getting that better, more rounded view of your customers, partially by using VOC, but then of course you have data of your own just from their own experiences, as Anna was alluding to as well.
Thank you for the question, Nicholas. First, I just want to say thank you to Anna and Martin and Carol and Nicholas and Reuters for having this panel and for everybody joining us from all over the world. It's really exciting. At Sutter Health, a lot of people probably have a different view of what health or healthcare is, and especially during the past 9 months of COVID. One of the key things that we've been doing I should say, because I just recently left, is that we are very extensively focused on both qualitative and quantitative data, but we've actually taken a customer journey experience, opposed to just asking a data of, say, Martin, just at a point of instance. We've actually walked along with whole groups of patients and non-patients who are yet to be patients, because our job is to actually keep you out, not be a patient. Actually, our focus is to actually keep you healthy and wealthy, WELLTH, and actually out of our hospitals unless actually that you were doing surgery, which is a very different notion of what healthcare is, because people used to think healthcare is getting you into the hospital. And Sutter and really the most innovative healthcares are thinking about how do we keep you healthy and proactively manage your health. And so one of the key things we do is we do customer journey experience, from whether it's what we call everyday care, which is primary care, so that most people under the age of 40 only need to kind of check in, or maybe for birth control, or maybe you are an extreme sports guy and you need to get your knees fixed or whatever, to women's health, which is all along the maternity health care, et cetera, to menopausal. Also, what we think about kind of what's the journey experience for people who have more chronic health, like diabetics, respiratory, and kind of hypertension issues, which everybody at COVID is dealing with. So we really focus on that whole experience. What's interesting, we team up with design innovation team, how we think about what they should be like, along with kind of digital clinical patient experience. How much can we do inside the clinic? But what's really interesting, which I wanted to share with the audience, is that in what we call everyday health, things that, like, not because you need brain surgery, but the top 5 things that people look for in making a consideration for healthcare is not the degree of your doctor, which is, I know, might surprise some doctors out there. And it was really hard to sometimes have these uncomfortable conversations with the PhD, MD, these world-class doctors I work with, who thought, like, we're going to talk about my Harvard and Oxford MD degrees, which we have at Sutter, and then a lot of the really key healthcares. But what do you think the number one thing that people look for in healthcare? I don't know what people are saying in chats, but is actually, do you have an app where I could actually make an appointment? And the second thing is, and this is by advisory council, all the top nation healthcare systems in the United States. The second is, could I make an appointment with you in a reasonable time slot? How many of you have actually couldn't make an appointment? By the time you get in, you're like, I'm over whatever I had, so I can't even replicate to you. The third thing is, could I get in and out without having to take off an entire day? Do you have parking? Is it easier for me to get there? Is there a place, where I could actually get something to eat? And then the fourth thing is So I think that and then the fourth thing is there integrated care? So really the whole notion of the doctor or even Sutter Health, which is one of the top 5 nations healthcare system, I think people assume that the healthcare they're going to receive, whether it's from a doctor or practitioner, is already assumed. So now we're really looking at consumerization of healthcare. So we really looked at, and we also looked at, answer to your question also, Nicholas, that we really looked at best case studies from places that I've actually brought to forward, which is digital, e-commerce companies and hospitality companies, because we have to remember the word hospice is in hospitality as well as hospital and hospital care. And that word meaning is about to make a stranger feel at home, who's ill at ease, feel at home in your place of care. Not just a neighbor, but actually, a stranger. And so we really take that to heart at Sutter. And I would expect that from the top healthcare systems in the United States, that's what they focus on. And the fact that you're getting data, not just from digitally, but also clinically, but in an instance, but the whole entire journey, Martin at home, what is he feeling when he actually comes into the doctor? What is he doing after, so that we could actually keep him healthy along the whole way. So we tend to have I'll stop there.
Well, Jasmine, there's just so much in there. That's great. That's such an important point that you make. And one of the things that I wanted to highlight there that you were talking about is making sure that in your industry, and as a CX guy, I always wonder about how different industries are approaching CX and what they're learning from each other. And the idea of viewing patients as customers, I think, is something that probably is coming out of all of the interest in healthcare these days with everything going on. And y'all are learning a lot from CX that's just out there in commerce and out there in e-commerce and everything else, where these other industries have been advancing so much when it comes to customer experience and voice of the customer. And it's refreshing to see a new industry kind of embracing it as well. So yeah.
I do want to make one little differentiation though, just for the doctors and the healthcare workers out there. There are customers and patients, but there's also patient, because when you get to what we call tertiary and quaternary care, like Nicholas, you have a rare brain surgery. We don't want you to be a customer. We actually want you to be a patient who actually listens to the world-class surgeon tell you what you might need. Of course, we want to take the practice of being a best customer relationship like a coach and guide you along the way, so you have options, not just give you one way, which is more kind of a patient hierarchical experience. But I think that there is customization, which is that how do you deliver services from your point of view, a lot more that has changed in the top healthcare systems.
Yeah. And you know what, Jasmine, actually that embraces an important point within the practice of CX, which is to be dynamic and use every opportunity to learn more about how you can best interact with your customers. Let's bring Carol into this and kind of like pass on the same question to you, talking about using different ways of getting a better picture, an overall holistic picture of your customers via voice of the customer and all sorts of other data sources as well. Carol, what are your thoughts on that?
So I'm a growth hacker, and I'm going to define that because a lot of people are confused what that means. So some individuals saying growth hacking is just social media or just paid ads. So when I want to tell everybody here, you can all be a growth hacker, but the focus is looking at how to make things efficiently. How do you grow the entire business? The entire business is focused on two things, and that's what I specialize in. I'm industry agnostic. I've done pretty much like telehealth, e-learning, e-commerce, SaaS. If you think about it, B2B, B2C, but they're different. But if you really think about it, it's customer and revenue, because you're actually creating a product that you want to serve to the customer. The customer has to understand what the trade-off is for them to pay for it in order for them to receive whatever that is to resolve your pain. So look at the entire growth of the business, not just marketing. But marketing, to me, I feel like is the brain of the company, and people can disagree with it. I understand there needs to be a product, but marketing has all this data, and we're data driven now. All these organizations want to get data, and you want to be able to look at how marketing affects sales, how sales is affecting engineering, how all these avenues are being connected to each other. But there is no connection when everyone's working separately. So I look at growth hacking is a business. It's like a ship. Growth hackers are the compass and the map to the captain of the ship, which is the founder, the person who's heading up the division. It could be the CEO. So when you look at that, you want to say, okay, the founder or the captain of the ship say, hey, we need to actually sail northwest. And the captain says, well, we have to sail north to the island. We see it clear as day. But I said, no, based on the data that I see, there's a storm coming and we have to make a little detour. And there is pirates, which I consider competitors. But not only do I look at the environmental, data and stats going on around the ship, which nobody really predicted COVID, but because of thinking like an entrepreneur, thinking like, tomorrow is not going to be stable. And I always preach this to even individuals that are working at a corporation that has the money. Because of that, you see innovation really quickly. You see that customers who may love you today may go to your competitor tomorrow. B2B is a little bit different. It does take a little bit time to nurture that customer to be able to finally get them on board. However, you should always be several steps ahead. But not only do you look outside the ship, you have to look inside the ship. What's marketing doing? How it affects sales? How does it affect engineering, product, or customer success? But you have to get technology to connect each other all together in order to be able to communicate each other in real time. So that's what growth hacking is. So if you have to really pretty much make sure that you're not just good at your division only, you're also cross-collaborating with other companies. And I also know Zaina has been asking this question at the very beginning. The most effective channel I would use that I underestimated, or actually other individuals underestimated, I think chat bots is a good avenue. And it may be annoying before, but imagine the phone calls are being down right now. If you have somebody in real time actually have a face, not just a robot, but be able to respond to the individuals. But there's ways of AI, artificial intelligence, to weed out the spam, because there are bots who just like to flood the chat bots. So that is one thing that I think, in order to not have people be upset to be on the phone so much, because now even healthcare are embracing real-time video to talk to doctors. So.
Yeah. Carol, I love where you're going with this. And I know that we want to get to, so you and I have talked about this plenty as well in the past, about the use of the data and where we go with the data. We'll get to that in just a minute too, but I'm sure that Martin right now is just itching to get in this conversation, because Martin, so far we're talking about gathering this data and from different sources and different ways of understanding and better learning about your customers. Vote Bash. That's what you all do there. Voice of the customer is so important. And all that we've been talking about so far this morning with these different ways of gathering this information, tell us a little bit about Vote Bash and how you use this technology to help these brands, your customers, your clients, connect with their customers via your platform and the collection and the use of this data. Martin, I think you're on mute.
Yes.
There you go.
Thank you.
Hey, pitch, start it over again.
Yeah, well, the way we see this at VoteBash is that the world has turned consumer-centric, and especially now where your customers are locked at home with this pandemic, there's a lot of change, right? You think you know your customer, but they have new habits, they have new challenges. So it's important to pull these consumers quite often. And on top of that, it's now so difficult to go into the market hassle-free. So we want to create something for the brands where they are able to do that in a hassle-free way, to get data in real time, so that they have actionable data that they can base their decisions on, and make sure that they are aligning themselves with the customer. Because right now, it's very important to understand the consumer and align yourself with the customer, and vice versa. So having said that, we are creating a platform where we have the ability to do that in an impactful way, but not only by gathering the data in real time, but also using the data for personalization later on with touching points along the customer journey. And the way we would do that is we allow the brands to deploy these surveys or these pollings in a very creative way, where they spread out the voted button. So when you vote, you get the I voted button, and behind the button might be a deal or discount. I will show you that later. And then to unlock it after the survey, you spread it with friends and family and coworkers who are in your same environment, experiencing the growth of the survey and the reach of the survey. So that's a different way of utilizing customer research by putting the marketing world together with the research world, and in that sweet spot in between, we will operate with a completely new offering on VoteBash, and that's what we do.
Yeah, Martin, as you walk me through the technology and how your clients are using your technology, it's really fascinating, because there are a couple of really cool layers of the way that you're soliciting this VOC, this voice of the customer, from your customers through VoteBash's technology. And I like a lot of that. First of all, you're creating this community, in fact, with this I voted button, kind of like we're going to go through here in the States next week, and kind of have been doing for the last month or so, where you're encouraging people to kind of broadcast that they have voted up or voted down your clients, or given them feedback in such a way that it's going to encourage that. And it's almost, and I'm not sure if you use this word necessarily, but it's almost a bit of a gamification, right? Where you're encouraging people to do this. You're also incentivizing them. And that's not necessarily something tremendously new, incentivizing people to give VOC and feedback, right? With, say, a coupon if you fill out the survey. But the way that it's all integrating and building out a community, right? Kind of leveraging on the Yelps of the world, right? That you're not just giving feedback, but you're also sharing it with a broader community, right?
Exactly. And then from there, we're going to experience network events. We just recently also got a lot of influencers on board that will be driving the traffic to those surveys. So we are able to commit to each and every brand at least 100,000 voter impressions for their surveys or their campaigns. And then we will be able to even build upon the networking effect that's manifesting within our community. So that's really fantastic. So you're basically taking the good parts of marketing and the important parts of market research on top of a layer with gamification, and then you get the actionable data on the back end. And when that happens, you get all kinds of things like personalization and real-time analytics.
Yeah, and in the end, that's one of the things that I always have to emphasize, is how important it is that you take action on the input and the feedback and the insights that you're getting from your customers, regardless of the channel, regardless of the means of collecting it, right? I want to get to a question here that, Carol, you had actually made a mention of Zena's question about the most effective channel that you used that was underestimated prior to the pandemic, sort of thing. I suppose we're talking about something that's kind of blossomed and so forth. Anna, what are your thoughts on that question? Was the most effective channel that you used that you underestimated prior to the pandemic?
So as a brand, we have made early efforts to go digital. For a long time, we stood up digital channels. We integrated with third-party delivery partners seamlessly. And we did all this work, but as a brand, we were still not ready to talk about it. We were not ready to promote it. And we didn't think that that will be a big sales funnel for us. Pandemic changed everything. And so the channels that were once completely underestimated and not marketed at all became our main and only channels. So for us, having done that work 5 years, I started that work 5 years ago and evolved and create all those platforms and all those channels and all those seamless ways to order, paid off big time during the pandemic. And honestly, if we hadn't had that going, haven't spoken or not about those, I would not be sitting here today.
Yeah, it's a good thing they had you, Anna. Right? This is great. And more questions coming in. And I think this is a great opportunity to pivot because Jasmine, I wanted to ask you about this. And it also goes to the next question that I have for you. So first of all, tell us a little bit about, the channels that you're finding valuable that you might otherwise not have considered. And then one of the things, and you and I spoke about this recently, that I find interesting, especially when it comes to the healthcare industry, is the tendency to go from, say, this can't be done. This is just the rule that you can't do it. It's not allowed. It's not possible sometimes. And then all of a sudden we're living in a world where, well, that's really the only way to do it. And what yesterday was almost illegal, and perhaps it was even, is today the only solution that could possibly happen because of what's going on. So as we transition into that question, let's talk a little bit about what it's been like in the shift and what channels you're finding are valuable. You'd mentioned digital, obviously.
Well, thank you for that question. Great question. Yeah. I think I like to think that Sutter had the foresight to hire me a couple of years ago because I come from digital and media and hospitality and commerce. But answer to your question, and this is this is a nationwide data, probably worldwide data, but also until a COVID hit, and for all the people who are marketers out there, changing human behavior is really hard. Humans really don't like change. Like 4,000 years and we still go back to nature because we still need to go hunt and gather out there. And so that's why we still go to the forest and go camping and etc.
Or to TGI Fridays.
Exactly. And so prior to COVID, telehealth was available, has been available for quite some time, for the past 5 to 10 years, probably unbeknownst to many of you. It was not very much used by the consumer, nor the doctors or the providers. And one of the key things is that our government, many of the governments they did not pay for those. The healthcare systems of the doctors, they said, well, it's not equivalent to somebody seeing Anna or Carol in real time. What could you possibly accomplish me just seeing Nick on a video, right? Well, come COVID, prior to COVID, there was about 10 to 15% usage, depending on which third party you look at, of video visits or telemedicine or telehealth, however you want to call it. You can imagine with the onset of COVID, it's been 90%. And even with the hospitals and doctors' offices opening, I think it's here to stay. And what's really wonderful, overnight, our governmental system is now going to, they said temporarily, but I think it's going to be here to stay, that they're going to pay full payment to the healthcare provider and your doctors for the telehealth visits. Now, I'm going to pause there. Because there's a lot of differentials. Not all things could be done in health at video, as you know. But I think that the whole notion that it could be interwoven and integrated and made coherent to providing care. So for example, things at Sutter, we have this Terra practice where we had, for what we call everyday health, which is more primary care medicine, which a lot of people don't get until you get to be over 40 years old. But most people just need kind of everyday health, like annual checkups, right? We have one doctor, one nurse practitioner, and a person what we call health coach that coaches you along so that you don't have to come in prior, or you don't really have to come in unless you do. So we found out the data shows that almost 90% of caretaking could be done through video and text messaging. And so one of the really interesting things that we have deployed as a prototype care is text messaging, and we offered it for free. That is not even something that you have to pay for or your insurance has to cover. And these are little minor things like Nicholas might write to the doctor like, oh my God, I've got this little bump. Is this a zit after 40 or is it like cancer? And somebody really on a video can actually tell you that pretty easily, right? Take a picture so that it could be like, Nick, take a picture, send it to me so that we could actually figure out. And if it's just a bad zit, like because you had a bad night, then it's done and you don't have to worry, but it's not hanging over your head because health is something that kind of hangs it's in the backdrop and now it's in the forefront. But I think that is the foundation of a healthy republic, to have, people who are taken care of in mind, body, and soul. So I think, answer to your question, all things video, use some text messaging. The third piece that we've been really using is I know a lot of people like to say chat bots, but they don't really chat, frankly. I call them conversational AI. If you could get a really good conversational AI, the Sutter really deployed a company called Ada Health, where it really started to give you some guidance. So like, say you are having behavioral health issues, you come in, we need to know right away, we're like, is it just like you're like starting your first maybe anxiety because of COVID? Or is this like much bigger because you have other comorbidity conditions, and comorbidities like other conditions that might actually either amplify or infect or affect the condition that you're getting on you. And a lot of people are finding out that they actually do have other issues, but you just don't know until you hit 37, 40, that you might have hypertension or other things. And so we're using a conversational AI to kind of get you along the way so that we could figure out, as Nick goes this route, because we know that he really kind of just needs to talk to somebody for counseling, but or Carol, we're going to send her this way because really she needs to see a MD, PhD doctor right away who might need a medicine along with that because we know that there's hereditary, physiological, biological, or she might be on other medication. So I think it's not like an and or, I think it's an and for what we're driving. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, and I'd also say what a great demonstration of the use of data, because Jasmine's got the number on all of us on this panel. She's obviously seen all of our health records, and But you know what? When you talk about these different approaches and different uses of data and technology and different approaches to interacting with your customers, I want to ping off something actually, Jasmine, that you said, and it's another hobby horse that I like to get up and yell about all the time, and that is when it comes to customer experience, when it comes to engaging with your customers, I emphasize to my clients how important it is that you bring in a diverse view. You were saying earlier, Jasmine, about how you had worked in different industries before. I think that a lot of the benefit that you've probably brought to Sutter has had to do with your not having been in healthcare forever. And when we, to kind of get back to this question again of different uses of different approaches and how what used to be impossible is now what everybody is doing because that's the only way to do it. If it weren't for somebody, for example, with your sort of outside of the box approach, that the leverage of these things that might be going on in other industries all the time, they may never have come around. I mean, would you agree that you're bringing in that diverse perspective outside of healthcare is what's helped your organization work?
Yeah, and I think, I think that's actually true, but also I think that luckily for us, there's such mashing of convergence of industries now. I mean, like, who would have thought Instacart is doing health? So I don't know if you guys know, Instacart did a deal with Doctor on Demand in August to deliver, medicines and things also through Instacart. Sam's Club partnered with a Seattle startup, 98.6, to deliver telehealth, like if you go shopping at Sam's. Kroger is gotten authorization to deliver COVID testing, and Walgreens Boots Alliance is investing, they have over 15, they're actually trying to build out 1,500 what they call minute clinics so that you could just get a lot of things fixed. So I think that we need to make that it's become part of retail, so that, because we know that, Nick, you go to banks and grocery stores more often than you might want to go to see a doctor because there's so much friction, right? And then I think the second thing that you said, which we talked about, is that the whole notion of hospice, like I made a joke, it wasn't a joke, it shouldn't have been a joke, but to some of the doctors I work with, to say, all of you, like, I don't know what hotel loyalty programs you have, say it's Starwood, right? And say you go to a hotel, you're going to Western Resort or you're going to St. Regis, and St. Regis, like usually $600-700 a night. You get to experience that. Okay, not in healthcare, but when I used to work for Expedia, we got that. People send you a text, you could do everything online. They send you, and then probably like Carol, if you booked a hotel at a resort 5 days before, they might send you a note. Would you like a hyperallergenic pillow? Would you like a down pillow? Would you like to, set up massages and etc. That same process for health, like typically when you go, it is not about like what the end consumer or the voice of consumer. We might say, Martin, please fill out 9 pieces of forms. Do you have insurance? And please wait there, is what you get. So we're really trying to shift that and not just getting the voice of customers, but also we need to help people, help our own customers in health reimagine and take what their expectation is in other part of their life and actually incorporate that and learn from it. There's no reason that we can't search and reapply. Of course, there's limitations of legal, regulatory things and clinical care for the doctors, but there are a lot of things, what we call the pre and the post actual clinical care, that what happens between you and a doctor, that we could actually help to ease the experience. And we're finding out that a lot of things, like good chunk of the experience of everyday health, or even like women's health, or even like what we call primary health, even for dermatology, for a lot orthopedics, could be done in a way that is more surrounding the patient customer rather than how the institution works or how the product works. And I think that's what you're talking about, like consumerization of it. And I also, second thing that Nick and I discussed was that Amazon Prime, probably for most of us, a good chunk, almost a third of the American citizens. And if we say every Amazon account is a household, that means half of American household, have been trained on customer expectation of Amazonian effect for the past 15 years, okay? Why do you think that especially all these people, we swipe left and right? We have text messages ongoing for like a little toilet paper that's gonna arrive, right? And a bill that says, thank you, and please, here are 4 different ways to refund, right? That we don't think that's seeping into what we expect of other services. And so, though that we know healthcare is very critical, $1 in $4 in America will be spent on healthcare. And so we wanna make sure that we actually, in places where we can, clearly not in brain surgery, not in heart surgery, but places where we can, it really matters to deliver the services and healthcare the way that a patient and a consumer, a health consumer, would like to do in an ease of their home.
Yeah. Jasmine, here we're talking again. We're talking again about how we're bringing these different diverse ways of approaching customer centricity into that healthcare industry, and so much to learn from that. Martin, y'all have at VoteBash clients who are in all sorts of different fields, and they're different relationships with their customers. Tell us what you've learned and how some of your clients are learning from the experiences that you've had through your experiences with your other clients as well.
Well, the most important thing, what we have seen so far, is that the data needs to be actionable. So it's not just okay to gather it, but actually to do something with it and derive action from it. And we have certain ways of making that very easy, making that very transparent. One example that I can give you is that what we like to do is create a heat map where the voters come together. So you see that on the map where there are clusters of voters with certain opinions, which gives you really a massive insight of where you need to deploy your marketing, or where you maybe want to open up a new facility, or where you want to do greater research and maybe direct supply chains to that region for different kinds of projects or products. And that's really amazing when you get that transparency. And we say one thing, the first step to improvement is transparency. So once you have that, everything else becomes a little bit easier. But that's the number one thing that we have learned so far. And that customer-centric, data-driven action is actually now a key factor in winning business, in growing business.
What are some of the examples, Martin, of how clients of yours are actually leveraging that data, not just collecting it? One of my mantras is you got to do something with it. You can't just collect all that data. We've talked so far a lot about collecting data and finding different sources of it and getting a better feel for what your customers want and how you can better interact with them as a brand. What are some examples that you have of how people have leveraged some of their insights?
Well, if you look in retail, you see a lot of different movements in the supply chain. You see a lot of different dynamics in the sales number, but it's sometimes very hard to understand the why, the why behind it. And when customers can tell you, I rather like this example, or I rather like this edition, or rather would want to buy this product, or maybe they are not interested in a certain area. in a specific line or in a specific product line, that gives you that transparency before you actually go into the market. So you will be able to optimize your lineup with your brand before you actually go out in the market. So that's, I think, the biggest takeaway of using platforms like ours. There are many out there that do it very well, and we just bring a different sense and a different layer on it with the gamification. But I think that's the biggest takeaway that customers can bring to the table. So brands, organizations, and even political organizations.
Yeah, but you have to be listening, and then you have to be willing also to act upon it, right, Martin?
Yeah, listening is key, and you have to act upon it, and those are very important. And in the end, it's the customer who decides, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Anna, talking about, using it, you've got 200 some degree view, right? Because maybe not all the 360 degree view of your customers, but how are you planning to leverage and use those insights to make changes to how TGI Fridays does business based on what you're learning?
So we do on the messaging side first. The messaging changes according to what are you interested in, what have you purchased, how many inquiries with guest services have you done with us, and any other behavioral data that we have gathered. So, first is message, super key to deliver the right message or the message expected to the right customers. The second is channel. So for me, it's really important to talk to or to understand what are the meaningful channels to talk to our users. Some users have the app. We can communicate with them directly to the app. There's no need to be filling their inboxes or sending them SMS, right? So it is also a way for us to orchestrate in between channels, and then the third thing is timing, right? When is the right time to talk to our users? Depending on what channel you are and depending on what message you can send them that are relevant to them, when do you talk to them? So it's all about bringing your data to be able to connect with your users at the right time, on the right channel, with the right message.
Yeah, great. I couldn't agree more. But Carol, I think this is a perfect opportunity to jump in and talk a little bit about what you said earlier about being data-driven and using data to make decisions. Tell us a bit more about your philosophy on that and how where you take the next step for being data-driven.
Okay, most definitely. I do believe that people are now well aware that, marketing is just not an expense center. It is really a revenue driver if you actually refocus that mindset in the fact that, you have this product and you need to communicate to your customers, patients, whoever your end delivery is for that individual. They need to understand what that is, right? And growth hacking to me is collecting that data, and people have used it with growth marketing and all that stuff. I just say it growth because it's the whole business. Now, I'm glad that a lot of organizations and individuals are data driven, just as much as that people are, back in the, centuries ago, they're driven to read 1 million books, right? You're driven to read enough, and so you can be intelligent to discuss issues and thoughts. And you can be driven all you want. However, the issue that I've seen time and time is that people and organizations do not have the individuals who are data literate. So that's the missing key. You can have data-driven organizations and individuals and have a wonderful storytelling of what the data you think interprets, because people struggle with it. They're like, well, this is what it means. And they tell the story and then tell it to the executive leaders or VC angel investors. And this is where it's going and heading in direction. But then you find out that, oh, we interpret it incorrectly. This is how it is. And it's okay. I don't consider anything failure. I consider it's a learning process. But data literacy is the missing part. Instead of just hearing data driven, I'm data driven. Everyone is driven to succeed. Everyone wants something, but you need to understand what that data means. Can you interpret it where there is an unknown? Like you're sailing your ship, your business to this massive sea. You don't see an island, but you have to go north. So you have to make predictions as much as you can based on incoming data and historical data that you have, but like COVID throws a wrench. But because of being an entrepreneur mindset, it's always unknown because you don't have that luxury of money and going in quickly. So you have to use what the little resources you have. Your time, your days are numbered. So making sure that you get to that point. So making sure that you're getting data from outside and internally. I know there was a question there. Somebody said, it's great to focus on the customers and revenue, but what about the employees? Employees are important too, which I mentioned inside the ship, making sure each department is connected to each other. For example, VoteBash is a good, platform to be able to get data, but there are also other platforms that you can connect with VoteBash, or if if your business doesn't require VoteBash, it could be making sure that your current platform is interconnected. I think getting, you don't have to love math. You don't have to calculate all that. What, Martin expressed, like his platform, it basically gives you the data you need. But what takes it one step further, making you more competitive than all the others and sailing that ship quicker, is being able to understand what it means. So, and so basically looking at growth from the very beginning, because I know there was a question that says, well, I'm starting out a business. Do I really need to do growth hacking right now? Growth starts since day one, because what is your intention? To grow the business. So you need to look at growth. What is your plan? What is tomorrow like? Are you going to be in the negative or positive? Because you can be growing since day one and be positive about that, and leveraging platforms like Martin's, or what Jasmine and Anna has been speaking about that fits in their organization. Remember, we can all discuss all this stuff and it sounds like, oh, I should grab that or I should do this, but you have to really look at your business. Nothing's a cookie cutter. Really focus on the ocean that you're sailing and the people internally, and also externally, that the route that you're going. So constantly being able to gather all the data is great, but be mindful of how to interpret that. We see it in politics, right? We have data in one party and another data in there. What does it mean? They interpret it in a million ways because they're great storytellers. Now, I understand this one thing here is that, well, we have data scientists. That's great. That's awesome. But data scientists aren't going to be responsible for being creative, to come up with solutions where we're like, okay, this is the data here. I understand what it means, but they have to do the data storytelling. There's data storytelling. It's not going to give you the executive buy-in. It's not going to be able to buy in the VCs, the angel investors, or even interpret in such a way that customers understand, because customers nowadays are very savvy. You can actually give the data storytelling to the customers. So it's important for you to be able to write in a way that communicates to your target group. So that's why it's important, whether you're a marketer and you're like, I don't like data, well, all these great platforms are out there. You need to teach yourself just basically, how can you predict the pattern, see what's going on? And not only that, there's not just A/B testing. There are a lot of platforms that do multivariate testing, bandit testing. So multivariate is like A through Z. So you figure out like all these variables, but that's a lot manually. So you leverage AI, artificial intelligence, and pair it up with machine learning, and the fact that you see this is a behavior here and there. Bandit testing does leverage that AI and narrows down A to Z to A, B, C, D, and then eventually narrows it down to A, B. Then that does it in real time. It tells you, okay, we got to make a detour and make a left turn here, or we have to do this. So that's how you're able to look at different ways of channels and understand which department you're supposed to focus on.
Brilliant point, Carol. There's an intermediate step between gathering data and using data. It's that interpreting, it's understanding the data, as you call it, data literacy, which is sometimes more important than being data driven. Martin, one of the ways that VoteBash helps your clients leverage that and take action on it and understand it is kind of like you're turning VOC into a bit of a lead generation type of a play. Tell us a bit about how some of your clients are leveraging that approach to drive loyalty simply by asking for customers for their feedback.
Yeah, so we started that in the early days of VoteBash, testing this model where we basically incentivize the voter with deals and discounts from the brands that they are answering those surveys from in real time. And then they unlock the deal or the discount, and we would send them to any kind of point of sale or e-commerce point of sale, where they would then redeem the coupon or the gift card or the code. And that's something that is very appealing because you're getting the data and the feedback in real time. You get your customers based on opinion, so you can also segment them in the markets with different type of key messaging. And we do this in a turnkey solution. And then we help the brands then drive traffic to their point of sale, whether it is in store, which is now difficult with the pandemic, and now more online. What we are seeing the past 2 to 3 years, where the digital transformation is actually happening, and the last couple months it has been accelerating, of course. That is something that we can do, and that makes market research actually profitable, because you're doing 2 things in one. Actually, you're doing multiple things in one, but you're actually getting the customer feedback, as Carol is saying, but you're also driving traffic to your profit centers, to your point of sales.
Yeah, yeah. You especially as you talk, Martin, about the digital transformation going on and how you're leveraging these new technologies. I want to get back to Jasmine and ask, since in the healthcare industry, that's one of the things that's kind of the highlight of the questions that you and I have been discussing, how healthcare is to a great degree embracing these changes. What else do you think other industries can learn from what healthcare has gone through in 2020?
Well, I think we're still going through it, so it's going to be a while. But I think that the real big learning is kind of playing off what Carol said. We, like health, because it's medical and science, we have tons and tons of data, but it's how that's interpreted and how that's couched in a context of an organization or a particular population to deliver like a thriving, well community. So how we apply that data and how it's interpreted and practiced, because data, I mean, I've been in a lot of large and small organizations. We're swimming in data. I mean, like terabytes, because digital, right? But it is also, how do you interpret it? How do you actually, like Carol said, how do you get buy-in? But how do you also, I always think about my role not as a quote marketing person, but as so what is my job to engage all the different stakeholders in their particular journey? And healthcare has more stakeholders than most other industries I've worked at. So because you have a patient who doesn't really sometimes want to be a customer, sometimes they're 2 different people. They're like, I'm thinking about it, but I haven't really chosen you to be a patient. There are people, you have Sutter Health is one of the largest employers in Northern California. Actually, most healthcare systems in your community are probably one of the largest healthcare workers, because $1 in almost $4 in America will be spent. So some aspect of health and wellness, you'll be doing it. The fact that Walmart and Kroger and CVS is going into health is a tells you right there, Instacart, right? Yeah. But how do you couch that, and how actually is practiced? And then how do we actually then take a test, take the data again, and then how do you continue to to improve and to optimize as you go? It is a little bit more challenging because we are, health is a URL, IRL. And I think that even the best Amazon, they know that they're actually, they were opening up 10 stores throughout. So human beings, all of us, we can't live just an IRL world. Maybe we will in 40 years, but not today, or maybe 50. So I think it's an and. How do you actually integrate that to be as seamless as possible, but not frictionless? Let me just say something. A lot of, and I was just musing when Carol said, a lot of companies like frictionless, all really good things. Like when you give care is actually friction between 2 people. Like I'm actually touching you, I'm embracing you, I'm supporting you, I hear you, I care for you. So I actually took my old boss through an Amazon store, an innovative store in San Francisco prior to COVID, and it was like frictionless. We just had our phone and we walked in. There was not anybody who said, hello, how do you think about the meat? We walked out, and he and I both like, that was just so clinical. That's not a point of care. So it's actually to also understand, where should you have good engagement, which is also a form of friction between 2 human beings, right? So I think it's to figure out, how do you use the data, how to use the voice of customer, couch it in that context, and to be really kind of surgical, but also be very, very intentional about which population are you going to use that data for? Because Sutter Health goes from northern Yuba County, Sacramento, down to Santa Cruz. It targets about 15 million Northern Californians. That goes from, you know, what you might think the coastal elite of Palo Alto and San Francisco to the Central Coast valleys of farmers, people who create 40% of basket, food basket of the United States, to the immigrant workers, to the California Sacramento Teachers Union and the Power Union. So we have a very diverse population, and so we want to use it in a very intentional way that fits that context of our patient, as well as kind of what the mission of the organization is.
Yeah. You know, great points all, Jasmine. I want to, before we wrap up here in a couple of minutes, Anna, I want to shift over to you. Jasmine was talking about, the healthcare industry being one of these where there's actual contact, right? And in the hospitality and the food and entertainment industry over TGI Fridays, for sure, with everything new, what insights have you gained, perhaps from looking into other industries, or perhaps just being dynamic in the new world where we are? How have things changed for y'all in your industry, Anna?
So I think for our industry is a little bit different. The emphasis in our industries, we need to stay away from people as much as possible. Ooh, I don't know what happened there, sorry.
The cat.
Yeah, I'm in a room alone, so this is weird. So we need to serve our customers and give them that Fridays experience while being not too humanly close to them, right? So the experiences have changed a little bit. We were able to enable some of the technology that we have created. For example, having a server still bring you your food when we were able to accept dining orders was great, but then we tried to minimize it, for example, with mobile payments. We reminded our users that we had mobile payments, so it was easy for them to just, get the app out and try to pay their bill without having any back and forth of that. So we tried to eliminate some of the points that we were able to eliminate, however, still trying to keep some of that fun interaction when we could. We did some of the things, for example, we enabled patios, even in stores that didn't have patios, because we felt that our users were more comfortable dining in patio environments. So we kind of improvised with some tents in some stores in some states as the weather got better in the spring. And that definitely, we were able to provide some of that experience in a more comfortable way. So it was all about adapting to what our users were expecting, and try to provide try to bring our Fridays experience when it was necessary, and try to leave some of those other points that were unnecessary. Yeah. For example, the check, like I said before, very transactional. On delivery, we were the same. We were trying to incorporate some of our materials in our bags to try to provide some of that experience for to-go orders or for delivery orders. So it was all about getting creative and trying to deliver that experience still, even though we were not allowed to do it sometimes.
Yeah, so you're leveraging, as you say, leveraging technology and the things that may be coming from other industries or other experiences that your customers are having, like the Amazon store that Jasmine was discussing, but finding something about that would actually enhance what that brand experience is supposed to be. Great point, and great points all. We're running low on time here, but I do want to go around the horn real quick for like 30 seconds each, and just give you all a couple of seconds to say something to wrap up. Carol, we'll start with you, the growth hacker. Let's hear your thoughts on what's next.
Well, it's a great opportunity to actually meet everyone here, and also again reconvening with you, Nick. If everybody in here on the panel, the attendees, if you have any questions regarding about growth hacking, businesses, or anything like that, I'm all about helping you maneuver through those waters. And if you want any more elaboration on that, and I'm sure it's the same with the other panelists, is to reach out to us on LinkedIn, and I'm more than happy to respond to that. If you want anything a little bit more deeper dive, I am speaking at several other conferences, most the ones that's coming up next week is obviously connected to Reuters here, joining with, Jasmine as well, and I believe Anna and Martin as well. So please come and join in. I do post that on LinkedIn and hope to hear more about you guys.
You bet. Thanks, Carol. Jasmine, any parting thoughts?
Oh, what I would say is that don't think that for all the people in marketing or customer engagement or data, you're not alone. Reach out to people even in really disparate fields, because they're not so disparate. I mean, I've actually been in media, commerce, and there's a lot of pattern recognition. So I would always think about search and reapply. And also there's sometimes like almost the most schema breaking data is what actually gives you the insight into something that actually breaks open an aha moment for you to actually create a really remarkable new innovation program.
Yeah, I agree. Martin, from the sponsor, Vote Bash, just a few seconds left. Let's let you have the last word, and then we'll say have a good day.
Yeah, thank you everyone for participating. This was very informative, and everyone across the world, stay healthy. I hope you find this very informative. I want to make a last call. We are doing a big campaign in November, and then our new website will be live, and we will be inviting 500 brands. These are special spots for people who are participating in this Reuters webinar. So please, if you haven't done it, sign up to Reuters mailing list. If not, you want to get a first spot, you can also mail us directly at reuters@votebash.com. And yeah, that's the last call I would like to make. And thank you everyone who have been participating in this round. See you next time.
Well, thanks, Martin, and thanks to Vote Bash for sponsoring. Thanks to everybody at Reuters Events for hosting this. Jasmine, thank you. Carol and Anna, thank you for joining us. Thanks to everybody who attended, and thanks for your questions. There are probably more things to come. Scott, we going to go back to you before you break, or should I just say we'll see you next week?
That's all right. I'm popping up to do my final
All right,
bit.
there you go.
So, yeah. Just to echo what Z said there, that wraps up today's webinar. I know we covered a lot of ground and there was some really interesting discussion, particularly with the different industries. It caused some really, really great lines of discussion there. So I hope you all found it as informative as we did. I'd like to echo what Z said there and thank each of our fantastic panelists, Carol Tran, Anna Guzman, Jasmine Kim and Martijn Attel, and obviously Nicholas for moderating as well. And for all of you for lending us your time and expertise today to make this a really great webinar. I'd like to thank Martin and the Vote Bash team for sponsoring and working on this with us. We will be sending out the recordings of this webinar early towards the end of this week or early next week. Look out for more details attached alongside that. Yeah, in your inboxes. And last but not least, I'd like to thank each one of you who joined us live today or will be listening on demand. I really hope that you gain some actionable takeaways. Up next from us over at Reuters Events, we're gearing up towards Strategic Marketing USA, which is taking place next week. Jasmine and Carol will be featured on that lineup, and we'll have more in-depth insights there. So make sure that you're tuned in and signed up for that. And then on the 17th and 18th of November, we have our Customer Service and Experience USA virtual event, where you can hear more from Anna and Martin. So yeah, the panel here, they've got some big things coming up in the next couple of weeks alongside us. To stay up to date with all things Reuters Events and updates on the events, please do make sure you're following Reuters Events Marketing and CX on LinkedIn, and also at RE Marketing CX on Twitter. But that wraps up today. Thank you from all of us at Reuters Events, and we hope to welcome you back soon to another event. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.